All right, let's call planning and zoning meeting. Today is Thursday, the 16th. It is now 6 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Sean Poole.
Here.
Member Randy Stout.
Here.
Member Lori Simpson.
Here.
Member Michael Ferez.
Here.
Member Ronald McDonald.
Here.
City Attorney Nancy Meyer.
Here.
Wonderful. The whole business to attend to first. Any discussion or comments regarding the board minutes from the last board meeting?
You don't have this.
We had no minutes?
We have no minutes on this agenda.
Perfect. Let's not do that then. Any comments from the general public regarding something we're discussing today? Something you want to discuss? Sir? Please state your name for the record and where you live.
How you doing? My name's JJ Murphy. My address is 4620 Bay Boulevard. And I also work for the county. I'm the Assistant County Administrator for Public Safety. On the agenda, I will address and, on items 1 and 2, why I can't speak to that. They are Port Richey business who have done so much for our community, volunteering, dedicating their time. I saw during the storm, they've been great of our community. I hate people.
All right, this time I'll close it to the public. Any comments from the board members themselves regarding anything not on the agenda? All right, moving along. Ms. Nancy.
Great. Your number 1, request for comprehensive plan amendment for parcels generally located at the southwest corner of River Gulf. Combined, there is a request for a plan amendment, and another is rezoning. The first one's a legislative action. The second one is a quasi-judicial action. What we do is we're going to hear our planner, Ms. Fran, is here. She's going to present both kind of together at the same time. But when we are done with her opportunity to respond, and you have your questions that you want to ask of either her or the applicant, is explain to you what the judicial, which will apply to the rezoning application. This is a meeting where the board acts in a quasi-judicial rather than legislative, not that's already been established, in a quasi-judicial decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence considers competent, substantial, and relevant. If competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing criteria established in the city ordinances, then counsel is required by law to find in favor for the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the code of ordinances, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. At this time, I'm asking if any of the board members have had any communications with the applicant regarding the rezoning application. Seeing none, okay. Do any members of the board have a conflict of interest with these applications? Okay. Then at this time, anyone that's going to provide testimony, which will include the applicant and the planner, needs to rise to be take the oath from the clerk.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
You can sit down.
Okay.
Right. Ms. Fran?
Over here, get some shower.
Here we go. Good evening. Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Tammy Verana with Verana Consulting out of Safety Harbor. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the 2 cases the plan amendment. That are the subject of this request and located at the River Road and is this on? Commercial mixed use, future land use category, to allow the subject parcels to be used for outdoor recreational vehicle and or boat storage. This is an overview of the subject parcel and Chapel Avenue. This slide shows the lot dimensions. Taken in 2023, and so as I'll show you in a second, there are some structures that are on the. As long as you guys can hear me, I mean, well, I know, but can you?
Should be okay. I turned mine on.
So we look as part of the categories, and we look at the zoning of the family or multifamily. You also have gray that indicates it's a vacant property that has a residential. This is per the property appraiser, so that is vacant residential. You have municipal, which is the fire station, the church down the way, and then of course the commercial that you see that's along Grand Boulevard. The future land use map shows that the land use include residential, which is yellow, commercial mixed use, which is red, and then the public, semi-public R2, two-family residential, which is yellow. That's most of the area, but there also is some, the darker orange is R3, multiple family residential. There's a planned unit development in the pink area to the bottom, and then to the west of district. And then there's a bit of down below. See when I think that's the clinic, perhaps, and part of that zoning map is the subject parcel looking west from. There's another structure that was also removed from the site. This shows a view of the subject parcel from Queener Avenue and then the neighborhood. So as part of the comprehensive plan amendment process, we need to look to see if the request is consistent with and that the ability for the city to provide public services, that it would, if there were development on this site, it would need to come in and have that evaluation done based on this precise use. At this point, it could be anything that could come forward. But one of the important things that we look at in terms of we look at density and intensity, levels of service, but an important measure is also neighborhood compatibility. And in your comprehensive plan, you have these statements, which I've truncated just for the space. Essentially, the overall goal of the future land use element of the comprehensive plan is to promote compatible land use. And then the policy below it is to preserve existing compatible land uses. The city shall require that all future developments will enhance, maintain, and be compatible with the existing land use patterns. And then I won't go to the other ones, but they kind of go along the same line that, you want to be compatible with visual appearance. You want to make sure that you're not introducing inconsistent land uses. The policy states that you're trying to remove inconsistencies, and that you're also going to use your zoning regulations to prohibit incompatible land uses when development or redevelopment proposals are heard. Has found that there's compatibility issues with this request in 3 areas relative to the existing land uses. Development, almost an acre site that would not have that regular pattern. Almost an acre site that would not have that regular pattern. Single family or even a multifamily development. Potential to character in such a way the neighborhood, the home values could suffer as a result of that. Street all the way down to Tree, all the way down to Kenwood Avenue. That's the entire avenue. Kenwood Avenue. That's the entire avenue. And all of the designated for residential is completely 100% residential. This area be of uses to continue. The vision of the city reflected in your comp plan, but if it's the vision of the city to expand commercial uses, then it's certainly something that entertain change for the area. In the area, there's some new residential investment that's just down the street. Cleaner Avenue and Chapel Avenue. This is a two-family home. 100 south of the subject parcels. So under the future land use category CMU, the property of 0.9 acres would allow up to 17 residential units, and the non-residential could be 27,748 square feet. Whereas today, you could have some level of non-residential office that's allowed in the R2, and that could be as high as 10,000 feet. But that's just more about zoning. So based on staff's evaluation and finding that the request is inconsistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan, our recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Board is to find the request to be inconsistent and to recommend to City Council that the request be denied. Now we'll go on to the zoning. Sorry, I'm going to get my... Here it is. Okay. So this is the same information, the same application involving 3 subject parcels that are, the parcel ID numbers are listed on the slide. The request is to go from the R2 two-family residential zoning district to the C3 general commercial zoning district. And a lot of these are going to be repetitive, so I'm just going to flip through them. So this is an overview, aerial site. The lot sizes and dimensions are the same. Here's an aerial view. Existing land uses, and I did mention land uses on the site according to the property appraiser. Parcel number 1 is vacant residential, number 2 is single family residential, and the 3 was a store office residential, and those were based on the structures that were there previously on the site. Here's the future land use map designations, the zoning, same views. Okay, so for zoning, we're required by code to look at 19 different criteria that's in the land development code. This is all analyzed within your document. So in looking at these different criteria, staff found that the ones that are highlighted in yellow have a consistency issue. So the existing, it would be at odds with the existing land use pattern. Potential adverse effects on living conditions because of the introduction of commercial use within a residential area. Related to that is site access and traffic circulation, potential for impacts regarding that. As I mentioned before, potential impacts. The ability to improve or develop adjacent properties could be impaired if there's not interest in investing in the residential properties that are around them because of the proximity to a commercial use. And then finally, there's an important the comprehensive plan. Again, this shows the residential extent on Chapel Avenue, where the parcels are shown in black. In the C3 zoning district, there's a long list of permitted uses that could be allowed on any property that has a C3 zoning. It also includes all of the permitted uses in the C1 zoning district. So I think that's, what is that one called? It's not neighborhood commercial, general. Does anybody know what the C1? I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway,
C1 is community commercial.
community commercial, neighborhood commercials in some places. Under the zoning district today, under the R2 district, you could achieve, I think it's 5 units because there was a plat or some change in the parcel size of the one, but it's a little less than what you could, that you'd need to achieve the 7 units, so you could get up to 5 units. And also for a 2-family dwelling type of housing type, you could achieve up to 8 units. Under the C3 general commercial, you could achieve up to 17 units on that almost 1 acre site, and then up to 27,748 square feet of non-residential. New investment in the neighborhood. And staff's recommendation regarding the rezoning is that we found that the request to go from the R2 district to the C3 district is inconsistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan and the land development code, and recommend that the planning and zoning board recommend to city council that the request be denied. And I'll take questions later, right? Or now or
At this point, you also have the report that was prepared that I'm sure you guys did it last night and read. So if you have any report or anything you've heard of the planner, now's the time to ask.
I have one question, just a general.
So yes, if you know, the application was received in 2023, and it was scheduled to go for, but the applicant pulled the application.
This property abuts the fire station.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And there's a church further down the street.
East, off of,
We are looking at building a new fire station. So that means the existing fire station, that property to expand. Is that possible?
I have not analyzed. Public uses are,
Well, is there the storage, RV store, open storage? No.
oh, that the
Fire station.
RV storage.
Okay.
Permits are not my. Anything else?
There's no other questions from the board at this point. The applicant has an opportunity to ask any questions of the planner if there are any at this point. All right, and then if not, it's time for the applicant to present any information that they would like to present.
I don't really have any more information than what I already.
And state your name and address and tell them what you want to say.
I said we presented what our intentions are for the property with the application.
Can you just state your name for the record, though?
Ryan Daly, I'm son-in-law of the owners of the property.
Does anyone on the board have any questions of the applicant?
Ron, Randy? Corey? Ron?
The use is only good, nothing else.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, is that it's going to be having our hand in the community through the restaurant and just being here for as long as we have. I know there's use for it. I mean, there's people on the river alone will fill that storage lot up with their boats and toys.
Is there a way to do a variance so they can use that property on a variance basis without having to rezone it?
Yeah, no, I think that's not possible, unfortunately.
Okay, no other questions?
No,
Does
I
the
may have a
planner-
question in the future.
Does our planner have any questions of the applicant? Okay, all right, well, then thank you. You can have a seat. Thank you. All right, this time you can comment and bring it back.
Any comments from the board? Questions?
Ready for discussion?
You want public comment first?
Sure.
Okay, any public comment? Anybody else want to say anything?
So now that I can talk on it, so what would happen if you wanted in the future and they were amenable to that? The actual community for public use to the same thing. So them not building a building may help you in the future. And I would just say, if you know, they used to have residential there, and I know they showed the nicest house, you know, in the, but they had residents who took advantage of the rules and didn't pay rent for years and cost them tens of thousands of dollars. So this is a community invested in Port Richey when not a lot of people were invested in a restaurant across the street. This rezoning buffers up, and if you pulled the map right back up, there is no residential on both sides. It leads right into, to your point, sir, leads right into the fire station, and then there's not residential, you know, across the street.
There's a storage directly across
Nope, nope.
Yeah, we can't have you speak.
I just want to point out that if you're going to go against staff, I've been on the other side of this, and I don't usually recommend that. I mean, this is something that doesn't hurt the community and actually opens the door for potential partnership with the city of Port Richey.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Please, ma'am. State your name for the record, please, and your address.
Shole Karimi. I live in 10825 Newport Richey, but I'm the owner of that property. And that property, that building that demolished, it used to be a commercial. It was a commercial building that we demolished it. So it's not, we said all of them is residential. It wasn't.
It was an old laundromat, correct?
Yes, it was a commercial.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Sir, please.
My name's Joe Brandow. I own the lot right across the street on Chapel Avenue, 7814. And I'm getting ready to build a house on it. My permit's in, so I don't have a problem with it being a storage thing across the street from where I live. So that's all I had to say.
Sure.
I live, and it's directly across the street.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, at this time, I'll close it to the public and bring it back to the board for discussion. All right, we'll go round robin. Mr. Perez.
So I'm kind of on the same page as Ronald. I get that. I understand why fitting into our plan and the fact that it abuts residential all the way around makes sense that we don't want to push any commercial use into that middle of that residential neighborhood. But because our city ordinances also don't allow for you to put an RV in the front yard or a boat in the front yard without getting in trouble, then RV and boat storage in and amongst residential makes sense. But my concern would be, as we've talked about multiple times on this board, changing a land use category and changing a zoning category to allow for their use right now opens the door for the next use. And what is the next use of that property? And that's something I think we have to discuss is there a way to do this in a way that makes sure that we don't open the door to a 27,000 square foot warehouse building or a 17-unit multifamily apartment building in the middle of that R1 residential space. So, I mean, that ultimately, I like the idea of having the storage there. I don't see a problem with that. The problem I have is making sure that we don't do it in a way that opens it for it to become something else. I was going to ask the same question you were. Is there a way to handle this without opening that door on a more individualized basis for this particular use, for this particular parcel?
Randy?
I don't have any comment.
Lori?
I don't have any comment either.
Ron, additional?
Yeah, I'd like to ask, you said there was a commercial building on that property
Yes,
that was operating?
yes.
Okay, hold on, this is,
Yes,
no,
I'm sorry.
This
is between you guys.
yeah, we're just
Yeah,
having a
this is
conversation
just
here. We'll
between
bring
you
it back to have a conversation there.
Okay.
So,
I understood there was a laundromat
yes, one time there was a laundromat there.
on that building. So we did use it for commercial at one time.
And it directly abutted the back of the fire station. So it was the westernmost north corner of that property, that parcel.
And it was then rezoned from commercial back to residential?
I don't think it's been turned back. Has it, Tammy? It's still C3?
According to the future land use map and the zoning atlas, there are no commercial designations on that site. So I don't know if it was an old, I don't know.
Someone just,
She's used to that.
It may have predated the comprehensive plan, which would probably been about 1990 or 88, something like that. And I'm not quite sure when you got zoning, if it was like 75. The county got zoning in 75, so
Been here.
What? A commercial building operating on an R1? It doesn't make
R2.
that would never happen.
Okay, well, that causes a little issue. Go ahead. Yeah.
And the building was destroyed at the request of the city, from what I understand.
I believe so. Yes.
So, and because it was blighted.
It was. It was a haven for undesirables for many years there. Unfortunately. Yes, ma'am. Actually, we'll come back to that. We're going to actually address and have a conversation of that. We were just kind of discussing amongst ourselves currently. I mean, I'm going to go with. It's an odd request due to the way the future land use map lays out. Due to the fact that if you know this physical neighborhood for many years, this has been not the best neighborhood. The vagrants, homeless, and everybody else thought it was a good place for them to go just hang their hats, which I thought was convenient to the fact that they needed Narcan. The fire department was right next door, so that would have made it really easy from that standpoint. They did, in fact, comply with the city and knock the building down to kind of clean it up, and it does look a lot better already. I personally agree with Mr. Frez in the fact that there is a serious need in our city for RV and because we are a boating community. So much so that the council's had multiple conversations about having to change our code the way we have it now to allow our residents to be able to park their boats in their front yard. I will tell you as a real estate broker, I don't agree with that. They know it. I think that actually hurt properties are on the water. But as such, we have a real need, and this would fit that need and help that. Now, said, I wonder. 34 on our packet. If the rest of the board will look at page 34. It's the drawing that they have, the conceptual site plan. Give everybody a second to get there. Good. Okay. My biggest, I guess we'll bring this back to the applicant when we get to that point, and maybe also Veronica's here, so she can help as well. Obviously, the egress on this drawing here is from the actual neighborhood. that egress and put it on River Gulf. Now the applicant would lose a couple of spots, it looks like, from their rentability, but that would change access being through a residential neighborhood. It would go from
That's their retention.
attention too,
So, I
right?
mean, the retention is, they wouldn't lose any spaces.
So I'm wondering if that would satisfy from that standpoint the required from the residential. In addition to that, and Mike's question about recommendation to council to modify and allow this, but for a specified use only. Correct.
That.
Right.
And there was it allowed the change, an agreement that they would only use it for that specific, what they had applied for. And
Correct.
they wouldn't change it. So that is an option, but you still have to allow the change.
Understood, but you can specify
And
what the
that would
change
be
is for.
that would be, and Tammy will have to correct me, I think remember was that with the zoning?
The zoning.
Yes.
There's a provision in your land development code that allows you to stipulate, a limited use in conjunction with the zoning.
And that would be filed, that would be official, and if should they sell the property, whomever purchases it is agreeing to do that, but they can come back to council and ask that.
Correct. They can ask for change after the fact,
Right.
but which of course council can deny and say absolutely not. It's still abuts residential, and this is all we've allowed for, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
So, and because of that fact as well, you can also go through with building department and specify what you want as far as buffers, which I see they go like, it looks like a 12-foot land buffer there, and else between the residential other projects.
Yes.
An example is right across the street from our city hall. There's an office building, but it's zoned duplex.
Right.
It's not zoned office, or it's been allowed to have that use. And my understanding is if they ever sell, they cannot sell it as a commercial property. It has to go back to the zone. Is there a way we can implement that to provide the
I don't
use?
Yeah,
don't think so.
that's the old school way of doing it. I own a piece of
I can't there's a site, but you can have a special exception for an office use in an R2 district. So perhaps they use
Do we allow that?
what their case is.
I know Pasco County allows it. I own a piece of property that has that. But
If you look in the
Yeah.
That's why we had square footage for the zoning, because you could have a non-residential use, but it's limited to office.
that's not going to matter. That doesn't really apply to use it as something different anyway.
Right, but we wouldn't be, I don't think we wouldn't be trying to set it so that if they sold it to someone else that also still wanted to operate it as an RV storage lot, that we would want it to automatically
There's a right to do that to
limit
Coolbass
it
anyway.
to that use, so
I've never
that
heard of
someone doesn't buy the RV park or RV storage and turn it into something we
Right.
don't want in the long list that you provided of C3 possibilities.
Well, like Nancy said, so in our code anyway to allow that to revert something back. Once we change the zoning is changed. There's an amendment to the actual future land use map. It's changed. So you have to go back and change it the other direction if that was the case. So, okay. All right.
Ms. Meyer, does that make you rewrite all this?
I don't like this. I just act like I know what's going on. No, Tammy is your planner, so she.
Nancy does the ordinance
Yes.
and the provisos.
Yes, but so the planning aspect that is her, and she prepared that. So I don't want you to think I'm in charge of that part. But
Yeah, don't worry about if there's extra words that have to go on the page, but you want to get it right.
yeah,
No, I was more concerned about what our path forward. It sounds like a bunch of us are in agreement, and we'll have to talk about if we are in agreement with that. But it
Right.
sounds like that is a path forward. So then, what is the?
so if that is a consensus to do some kind of, yes, we'll agree to this, but with this caveat, then as Sean had said, you could recommend to council to approve with this condition or with this additional requirement.
Especially maybe if we make a requirement that you cannot build on that property. If you're going to use it for RV storage at this point, the option to use it, utilize it for that purpose without the permission to build in any way. That way we can satisfy our needs as a community for storage, which we don't have enough of, and at the same time utilize the property for what they want it for without making any real changes that it could come back and bite us later on. The fire department may eventually need that property, so having it vacant and maintaining it vacant, if we ever have to expand on it, might help the city in itself.
Okay.
There's thoughts.
But does it show on here? I can't read it. What the surface of this parking area would be.
Because it looks like the pavement is here. I think the rest of it looks like it's something.
It has to be pervious.
So it have to be pervious.
Yeah. Otherwise, it would have never got past her desk.
Yeah.
So.
Even with the retention pond. So, I mean,
Correct, but just even from a preliminary, you wouldn't have a conversation.
I was just thinking that because I know where he's going with it. Is that if you're that entire parcel, then that may affect our thought because of future use and other things,
Right?
And runoff.
Ms. Lori?
My only concern is like access through a residential neighborhood because I have to deal with that everywhere I live.
You live it.
And I do patronize it, but it just shouldn't have been, but it is now. So
what do you thought about? What were your thoughts about Mike?
I think that's good.
I also.
Board? Ms. Nancy?
I think you would indicate he come back up.
Absolutely.
Normally, I would tell you not to. If you're going
Sure.
to let the applicant come back up, let Tammy.
We'd love to hear what he has to
come
say.
back up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we try to do that first, and then we can just go to vote.
Sure.
So we'll work on that
100%.
next time. It's hard.
Okay, first, we have no intentions of paving it. Would just probably stay crushed gravel like it is right now, and we would just mow it, so that's not going to be a. The entrance already on like to where the laundromat building used to be. There's a fence there that's set back between our property and the fire department. That's where just hasn't been fixed, but we're not having intentions of having the in and out off Chapel.
Oh, okay. So
It's going to stay where it is over there between the fire department. There's already a setback where a fire truck could actually pull into the gate and not stick out in the road. That's the whole intentions of this other part here. And lastly, yeah, we would be perfectly fine if you guys would be able to do that, where you'd make like an amendment to it to where we can only use it for storage. And if we had to sell it, you guys would have to do a vote.
Sure.
We have no intentions about doing anything besides like what we're saying, storage. I'll go in and mow it, keep it grass, and we'll just have a fence around it. That's it. That's all I have to say.
any questions or comments for the applicant? Okay. Thank you, sir. Oh, you ready? Go ahead.
I was gonna, I think it's very doable. That if you can word the motion.
That has to be part of the motion anyway. From that standpoint, correct me if I'm wrong, Tammy. That's a site review issue anyway. As far as access to, if you're going to allow the zoning change, particularly we're talking about, for him to be able to utilize this process, our property for this purpose, that the access only be off of one particular objection. That wouldn't have to be on. Would it? Oh, it should. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I'm correct. It would be during site plan review anyway.
So make a new site plan? Oh, sorry.
No, there's another step after this one, or a couple. Veronica, spend some time down.
So the proviso you were talking about to limit the uses?
Yeah.
Zoning, but site plan is another step, so.
Understood. Perfect. Yeah, so that's another.
Well, but assuming that we were willing to approve it with the proviso, but it sounds like only if we know that the access is going to be not on that residential road. So does that need to be part of what we're doing now?
I would put that in there.
So you want,
Yes.
We need to have
Yes.
both of those
All right.
pieces.
Yeah,
It needs
I
to
would
be a
put
proviso that
any-
it does this and that it doesn't access Chapel.
Yeah. Any conditions you want to put forth, I would include in that.
okay.
Like we can require a 6-foot solid fence around there so it's
That would be,
visible.
And I don't know what our fence code.
and it depends on our fence code, which
Yeah, 8 foot, I'd hope.
yeah, that's
We're gonna,
that's a,
it'll follow the code.
yeah, it'll follow whatever code we actually have for fencing.
And we covered that. Talked about switching over and adding that to the C3.
Correct.
Able to have like the gate open somewhere there on the on Chapel side for like an emergency exit if we had to have, or for some reason it had to get in and out and it had to open it like we as the owners had, and we could use it if we had to for emergency longer trailer or whatever the case may be. It's not going to be everyday use. It would be.
That's a question for Veronica.
Emergency use only.
So that, you can do that in any gate on any side because it's not direct. It doesn't need an apron. So as long as it doesn't need an apron, you don't care if it's fence or gate, right?
So the short answer is yes.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah.
We don't speak for
So
zoning.
Tammy has anything else?
Or for
Is Tammy, any other comments or questions?
Then you guys ready to vote?
All right. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So now we're ready to vote. So we're going to take these one at a time. Your first one is going to be ordinance 20 map to redesignate the 3 parcels from residential to commercial mixed use.
Okay. Do I have any motions? I will entertain any motions.
We gotta get the wording on this right too.
Correct.
With the proviso. In the
That'll
wording.
the conditions will be connected to the zoning.
That'd be zoning, yes.
So that's the next one.
So not this.
This is comprehensive.
Yeah,
So
this
no.
one you're changing. Change it. You change it.
So you just need a motion to approve?
Mhm.
Oh, I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Your next one is going to be ordinance 25-710, and this ordinance the zoning map to redesignate the 3 parcels from R2 2-family residential to C3 general commercial.
Now, Mike.
I have notepad open. Let me type it up. So I use my iPad.
Mhm. I didn't say that. Ashley said that.
Very fast. Now, can I just reference in the motion approving that they recommending the council approve ordinance 25-710, or do I need to?
No, you can recommend that they approve ordinance 25-710 with, and then explain what you want the conditions to be.
Perfect. So do we call that limited to in specifics, or do we call it as limited to the proposed? The
I would
or
get
you want to call it specific?
I would get specific.
Okay.
with access from, et cetera, et cetera. Job is trying to make council's job.
I'm sure they appreciate that.
Okay.
I motion to recommend to council that they approve ordinance 25-710 with the following condition: that the use of the site be limited to boat and RV storage with access from River Gulf Road only.
Perfect. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
That's done.
All right. Do I have any other? I'll entertain any other motions.
We have another. There's another
Oh, what am I
another
moving
agenda
forward
item.
to? Oh, you got another agenda?
One more agenda item. See,
I thought it
Tammy's
was-
not leaving yet.
I
That
thought I
means
was
there's something
speeding
else
the
to
record.
do.
Come on.
They were like, okay.
I was ignoring this one. All right. Miss Tammy, today's your day.
I'll be in touch with you about that conditional document. You can, if you can wait, we can talk about it now, or I can call you later.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right.
All right, thank you.
I'll tell you what you're doing. Give me 1 second. I'm on the wrong page. All right, now you're going to hear proposed comprehensive plan text amendment changes that will align the city's with state statutes following the latest evaluation and appraisal notification from Florida Commerce.
Gotcha.
But Tammy's gonna make some plan if you guys agree.
You need to stop backpedaling on how.
Not, then it can't be my fault. It can't be my fault.
Okay, can you hear me?
Plausible deniability.
Yeah, turn it
Yes.
on.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, good.
Okay, so you got a big packet with a lot of policies. And this is a response to the city's evaluation and appraisal of its comprehensive plan. We did that in 2023. We shipped it off to the state. They approved it, and then they said, okay, well, submit your amendments that you identified within 1 year. So we did work on that this past year. We met with the Comprehensive Land Use Plan Committee. I think we met maybe 6 times. I still think we started in February and we ended maybe June, more than that.
It sure seems like more than that.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes it was like every other week.
Yeah.
But then, things happen and whatever. So here we are. But that's okay. We're not slowed down by this. So what we're going through tonight is the identified changes to those elements that came about through the evaluation and appraisal. And what that does is specifically look at changes in state statute since the last time the comprehensive plan was updated. The last update to the comp plan was, I believe, 2010, maybe 2011. I think it was approved, but it was around that time. So it's been a good long time. Also, your comprehensive plan has the title 2020. That's the horizon year. So since we're beyond that, we need to push it out. So it's now going to be the 2045 comprehensive plan. There is a requirement. It used to be 10 years for cities. Now it's 20 years for everyone. So you need to look at what your needs are out to that, and then identify policies that help you address those needs. So in the evaluation and appraisal report, there were changes that affected the elements that you see here: transportation, infrastructure, conservation and coastal management, intergovernmental coordination, and the capital improvements element. So jumping right in, the first one is, there's just a few, I think there's 2 in the transportation element. So the statute identified that US 19, which is a facility on the strategic intermodal system of the state, needs to be recognized as such in the comp plan. Also, there's a requirement that the city coordinates with other jurisdictions for facilities that run through their communities, including the DOT. So that's simply what this policy does, is just to mention that US 19 is a CIS facility. coordinate with those other local governments to set your level of service standards in the city. Next, there's addressing recreational traffic through a policy in your comprehensive plan. And I will add, the Planning and Zoning Board is the author, supposedly, of they're the ones that create the comprehensive plan. Staff helps you. So if there's anything that you see that you feel you'd like to add to or change, feel free to suggest. But this is dealing with recreational traffic, just making sure that you're providing safe and efficient connections to the places that people want to go in your community by walking or biking. Next is the infrastructure element, and Matt worked very hard, the city manager, on a water supply facilities work plan for a 10-year period. So it's the 2025 to 2035 water supply facilities work plan that demonstrates that the city has enough water supplies and adequate facilities to meet the needs of the existing and any projected population. Because the city is doing better at, or maybe not better, I don't know what they were doing back when it was established, but initially was 105 gallons per day per person or capita. But the numbers show that number could be dropped. So the city's proposing to drop that to 96 gallons per day per capita. And as I mentioned before, that standard applies to both water supplies and also your treatment and distribution infrastructure. This one just recognizes the water supply facilities work plan, and this was just beefing that existing policy up to state what's required. 5 years when the Southwest Florida Water Management District updates 18 months to update their water supply plan. So everything's coordinated, like accounting. Everybody's paying attention to what's coming in and what's going out. So in the intergovernmental coordinate, and I'm skipping coastal and conservation, or conservation and coastal management, because it's a bigger bite. So let's just get through these easy ones. Intergovernmental coordination, there was statute changed to take out the use of voluntary dispute resolution processes. It's now a mandatory. So if there is a potential for a dispute between local governments and state governments, there is a process for that. The Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council facilitator in those types of things, but we just wanted to allow in place of mandatory. And then also related to that is just these little tweaks. We had to take out voluntary and these other ones. So pretty straightforward stuff. In the capital improvements element, the city has a concurrency management system that shows that the city looks at the available capacity in its required public facilities to make sure that there is capacity available to meet the demands of not only what you have existing in terms of development, but what you are entertaining for future development. So you go through that process, like when I do the level of service analysis, that's what we're looking at, is how much is left and is there any need for changing or upgrading your facilities to be able to accommodate development. So we updated that, and the city has a concurrency management system, so we don't necessarily have to say all the things that's going to be in the code because it already is. So it's just an update. Also within this table, which includes all the city's level of service standards in the capital improvements element, it's also stated within the infrastructure element and some other places, but we just wanted to carry over that 96 gallons per day per capita for potable water. And then also relative to the concurrency management system, we just clean up referencing the statute, just making sure that it's clear. Oops. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over. So the conservation and coastal management element had a requirement in statute that the
city include peril of flood policies that are required by statute, and the city needed to add those. So coming off the heels of your vulnerability assessment and your adaptation plan, we had the information because we kind of held off on doing this for a while. We were waiting for data. So we had the data, and then we figured if we were going in and really addressing peril of flood, we may as well just update the entire element because the information was quite dated. So this just shows the table of contents. So in the process of we met with the Comprehensive Land Use Plan Committee, listening to comments from the local elected meetings, and also just understanding what the data and analysis were saying in this element. We came up with these key planning issues. So the top issues, if you will, under conservation is management of groundwater resources. So making sure that you have sufficient supplies. There was some evidence of saltwater intrusion, so over pumping or pumping exacerbating along with all the other within the environment. Pollution largely related to groundwater. So there is the evidence of the PFAS chemical system, also surface waters. We've heard a lot about, I think, the councilman over here talking about, or somebody was talking about pollution in the canals. So was it somebody who was talking about pollution in the canals? But anyway, overall, in an urban place with a lot of paved surfaces and runoff, that's who knows how old systems are in your community. That stormwater is running all through the county. That it really is something to keep on top of as far as keeping your waters clean, because your waters in Port Richey are very important to you because it's here. And then there's sustainable management of ecosystems, and also related to urban places that have been developed is that ecosystems tend to get impacted, fragmented, they're destroyed. So just making sure that you're keeping what you value. Coastal resiliency issues, flood resilience, that's comes right to the top of the list. Economic and social equity relative to resilience. So people in your community who are low income, who are elderly, who don't have access to good transportation. How are, in the face of disasters, how are we accommodating all of the community who may have difficulties in accessing services or upgrading their homes or whatever the case may be. And then the last one is post-disaster redevelopment planning. There is a requirement that coastal communities address post-disaster redevelopment within their comprehensive plan, and it's strongly encouraged that communities develop a post-disaster redevelopment plan, a PDRP. So there are some policies within the comp plan that we'll go through. We're not really go through everything, but it's in there that addresses what would go into a post-disaster redevelopment plan. So the element, and I will add that the old element, the adopted one that's on the books today, will be repealed and it will be replaced. So there's not a lot of underlining and strike through, because that would just be maddening to me putting it together, but you all reading it as well. And also it's very dated information, so we just want to slide it out in with the new. And there's a lot of thought put into these policies, but there's always room for improvement. So we want to hear from you if you have suggestions. So these are the 5 goals which organize. Oh, look, my community engagement doesn't have a capital C. The first goal is natural and cultural resources. The second is coastal resiliency. The third goal is preparedness and evacuation. The fourth is post-disaster redevelopment. And then the fifth is community engagement and partnership. So under the first goal, natural and cultural resources, we've broken that into 7 objectives under which there are supporting policies. So we've broken this down into ecosystem preservation, habitat protection, air quality, water conservation, energy conservation, which is required by statute, resource protection, and under coastal resiliency goal 2, we look at risk assessment and mapping, so keeping on top of changing conditions and what's happening in the environment relative to coastal resiliency, public infrastructure, and keeping that safe from flooding, natural flood protection through green infrastructure that provides ecosystem services. Of course, land planning and regulation, so keeping new development out of harm's way. Building standards, so building those flood structures. And then finally, risk financing and insurance, including the community rating system that helps to keep flood insurance rates low. Goal 3 is emergency preparedness and evacuation. This is showing that that you're preparing for the emergencies that will come, and that you're also keeping in mind what the evacuation needs are. There is a statute that we have included in the policies. And goal 4, we have 3 objectives: post-disaster recovery, so getting things need to be done as quickly as possible done, and then post-disaster repair and redevelopment. So, getting businesses open and people, and then there's the post-disaster redevelopment. What you've learned, which I'm sure there are events we all learn, and so what could we do better or do in advance, or what can we plan to handle things better in the future? Always room for improvement. And the last one should be community outreach and engagement, but I didn't do that. I did this very quickly. My slides are not as gussy up as they normally are. The objective is engagement, so really involving the community, keeping them informed and engaged, and then also partnerships with the county, partnerships with the state, partnerships with business, all of the people. Local government alone, but there's certainly willing partners out there to help. Oops, I guess that was it. So with that, I can't go through every single policy because we would be here till next Tuesday. But if you have any questions on specific policies, I'm going to pull up my document, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All these different policies, so we approve it, and the council approves and everything. Who interprets these things, and then who enforces?
So the policies address a lot of different things. Implementation happens in various ways. For instance, if you show that you have, not within coastal management, but in infrastructure, that you show that you're growing and you're seeing that you're not going to have enough infrastructure, then that's something that would be handled through capital improvements planning and budgeting. So that's one way. For things like development standards, and I'm going to bring up the wetlands. I forgot to bring that up before. If there are standards or things that sort of guide development, that I talked about neighborhood compatibility or compatible land uses, density and intensity, things that say thou shalt do this when that, are they land development regulations. It's best when you can take those policies and move them into your land development code. Other ones are aspirations for something that somebody might get a grant, or a community group may come forward and want to do something. Sometimes the policies in your comp plan help you to get the grant. So look, this community is really the parents want to create a more resilient community. So therefore, we see some commitment. They've already put it in a plan, but it's that thou shalt do them. If push came to shove, they could just be taken out of the comprehensive plan. You could always amend it if there's something that's problematic. I will bring up, while I was thinking about it, there were some wetland policies. So how you treat applications of wetland, category 1, category 2, category 3. Category 1 are the larger, more of a system that are really valuable, all the way down to category 3, which might be small, isolated, not as important ecologically. The city has, for category 1 and 2 on the books today, they require a 30-foot upland buffer. And that's important. Zone is not only important for flood attenuation, assimilation, I'm not quite sure what the word is, but it's also, habitat area. You need to have land between the uplands and the water for things to happen. So for category 1, we 30-foot buffer, upland buffer, but for the category 2, in that case, we're deferring to SWIFT. I can't say for sure it's 25, but I think in most cases, because they value it based on conditions that are happening on a site, but I believe it's about 25. So that did meet that proposal. So certainly something that we can there. I don't know if minds have changed after the situation that all the but that's something to be considered. Does that answer your question?
Not really, but
how is the policies implemented?
well, let me just say something else. The reason I'm kind of interested in this is that I spent all last week in Los Angeles in the middle of those fires. Okay. And now looking at this, last year, the year before, or some years back, but relatively recent enough, there was a Los Angeles City Council, and there was all these different councils like us, and they were talking just like this talks. And I think they were paying a price for that. Yeah. Okay. And so that concerns me. There's talking about climate change, there's talking about endangered species and things like that. I mean, I just think that without any real specifics, there's a lot of flowery language in there.
So it's not a code, it's not a land development code, but if there's anything that wants to take from that and make into a code provision, a logical step. Is it, it's a policy. This it's the comprehensive plan. It's your city's constitution relative to land use and development.
What would happen if the city doesn't approve this? Just flat out says no.
If the city doesn't approve that, then they would not be able to amend their comprehensive plan in the future. They would not cut off from grant opportunities. So there are some sticks if you don't adopt. Now, is the state adopt all those precise words? No. But they do want to see that you've got, in statute, there are things. You shall address flood potentials, hurricane evacuation, sheltering space. It doesn't tell you how to do it in most cases, but it does do it. So we do need to have the policies, we need to have a comprehensive plan, but there's a lot of latitude for the uniqueness of a community to come through in their policies. What as a planner, I use when I go into a community, I can't talk to everybody and be all up to speed on because everybody's got a different opinion anyway. But I have their comprehensive plan. I knew at some point those things were important to people, and so that's city councils. It was important to them when they adopted it. So that's what I use to make my decision. I don't make these things up on my own. I'm using those as it's kind of the guardrails of, or in some cases things might be a little gray, and you could say, well, the comp plan says this, it's supportive. A lot of times a comp plan is supportive of the actions that you want to do. It's very rarely that things happen like tonight where it's just, kind of coming up against a request. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. I know it is not, it's not code. It's not thou shalt do this. It's the city's policy to consider these things, protect these things, or whatnot.
I think the city, maybe in fewer words, the people that enforce this are you, you're the front line of all these policies because development that occurs is going to be coming before you and then ultimately to city council. So ultimately, city council, this is their vision for the community, or, I guess a longer version. Over time, council makes those decisions, makes the policies that implement these sometimes aspirational goals less aspirational, more necessary. And then, from the back end of that, once there are ordinances, laws that are put into place, it's the staff that goes about and to enforce it. But the front line actually is you, and that's why this process starts, through the planning commission to make sure that these are things that you want to see in the community and you believe are important for future development, good of the community, and then ultimately council weighs in as well. This verbiage.
Well, I started with your existing comp plan, and then I reviewed other cities that have, like City of Clearwater, City of Tarpon Springs. I looked at what their comprehensive plans were, including. I looked at the statute, so I see a provision, and then I craft something. It's a blend, but pretty much it came from meeting with the comprehensive plan committee, kind of wordsmithing things, and I mean, we've been working on this for almost a year. So,
Were there town hall? Was any of this? Did the citizens get any opportunity during that when you were doing all of that stuff in here to be involved in any of the vision?
Well, there obviously those meetings were open to the public. There was the ability for public that attended, and I'll say there was very little attendance.
right. We did have some though.
But we did, yeah.
Mhm.
But the reality is the public process really begins here and then goes to city council. And then once city council, if they determine that they want to adopt it, the state comes back, and again, there's another opportunity for the public to comment on it.
Yeah, I mean, just because you're going to get yelled at for you didn't listen to them. If opportunity was given that this verbiage was designed by staff, written by you, vetted, discussed by us, and they had opportunity to the plan, the vision for the whole thing, then I mean, we've had multiple discussions about the difference between what they want and what they need, and the government's job is to implement things that are needed that a lot of people don't understand need to be there in the first place. So that was really,
I before the evaluation and appraisal process, I did City of Newport Ridge. It was a big, robust process. We had visioning, we had workshops, we did visual, and that went into addressing their major issues. So we had 5 big things, and they built their comprehensive plan around that. But that requirement went away. And so a lot of times communities are just looking at, are you keeping up with state statutes? And that's what this effort was. It's just that when we were going in and we saw what sort of, the policies regarding resiliency, which it wasn't even called resiliency back then when that was put together, they were all over the place. And so rather than trying to figure that out, why not just or deal with all those different places and pulling things together? Why not just update the element? We just thought it was like a value add thing to do. But if you were doing your future land use element, transportation element, housing element, I would think you'd go out to the community. They may not be as concerned with conservation is more of like a feel good element. It's the things that people care about. They care about life. I have read so many comments of people in Port Richey and in Pasco County. The environment is things that people care about. So, but I think in terms of land use, transportation, housing, those might be the time where people would maybe be more excited about coming to a meeting to get involved.
And I think there has to be a commitment to actually do those things. I mean, Tammy and I have spoken many times about we have to do a broader planning process within the community and get into those elements. The problem is, though, you can't get into those elements until you have the ability to get into those elements. And right now, until we get this submitted, we don't have that local control to start going back and doing that
Right.
the next planning that.
No, you gotta have a vision. I mean, I tell my guys that all the time. We gotta begin with the end in mind. You guys, that's. I just wanted to kind of know what your general
That's
process.
what I say. Begin with the end in mind. But hey, I love it when a community has a vision. It makes my job easy. It makes your job easy. So.
Because then we're building to the plan.
The question is regarding was on page 114 was the severely damaged structures. Who modified that from 50% to 45%?
So-
and as such, did the citizens know as such?
I'm glad you brought that up. That's why it's yellow, it's highlighted. When we were going through the committee process, there was discussion about it going to 49. I think the mayor told me.
Had discussions of putting in 45, but that's changed.
You just met on Tuesday regarding that, so we're going to bump that up to 50. So thank you so much
Oh, is it okay?
for pointing that out.
All right. So that's a non-issue.
And you put a lot of responsibility on both Matt and a civil defense coordinator. Is that a department or a person?
It's a person.
And do we have that person?
I think it's Matt, isn't it, Matt?
I think the way that the state law would look at it, yeah, is probably me.
Well, you have two there. He's got UN.
Yeah.
He's got both a civil defense. Do we have to have a dedicated civil defense employee now?
I think the civil defense piece, though, is the way the statute reads, if I'm not mistaken, because that's not the way it's worded within the charter. So I think.
Well, is there a recommendation for making this aligned with your charter or?
Well, I believe we had that discussion in one of the club meetings, and we kind of coalesced around that was something that was probably in state statute somewhere, and they're actually, probably the duties are interchangeable. So we just said leave it like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
We just buy him another hat.
Yeah.
So yes, where to? He just switches back and forth.
I'm pretty sure that it's old language in state statute that, when you look at the duties are the same as emergency manager. So
Civil defense isn't a hat, that's a helmet. It's different. That's different.
But we have to be protected in case there's a rare smelt around that would affect all of our water supplies too.
Okay. That's a lot.
Are we going to be able to review this in detail
if you like
at our leisure and have another meeting?
You certainly.
If you guys want to, we can absolutely table it. And, it's going to come back soon, so you're going to have to read. And that's not going to. It's not going to go. But if you think you need more time to make that recommendation,
Do we need a motion to table it?
that would be yes.
Would you like to make a motion to table it?
Yeah, but I'd like to make a motion to table this. What is it called?
The ear-based amendments. The ear evaluation and appraisal-based comprehensive plan amendments.
The comprehensive plan in front of us to our next meeting.
Okay. Time discussion or a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, do I have any other motions?
Now you can ask that.
Like one to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.